Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Before we get into tonight's game, I wanted to talk about the sponsor of this video, Card Conduit. Card Conduit is the best service when it comes to selling your extra cards. Don't waste hours trying to find the best buy list price for your cards online. Simply send them to Card Conduit and let them take care of the rest. Send them your unsorted cards and Card Conduit will sort, grade, and find the best price for you online. They have three main services. Their standard service lets you send them unsorted cards of any value. They will sort, grade, and give you the best prices for your cards, including bulk. Their curated service is similar. Send them your unsorted cards worth over $1 in value, and then they will charge half the fee of the standard service and charge no fee per card. Their new sorted service is a great value as well. Choose cards in advance with their selection tool, send them pre-sorted to Card Conduit, and they will grade and buy list them automatically. Save yourself the time of having to send them to multiple sites and let Card Conduit do it instead. Their fee is only 2% with no fee per card. They will give you the best price for your cards as well. They work with competitive buy listing partners, including ones not open to the public. Users get an average of 19% more for their collection than they would from any major retail buy list, even with Card Conduit's fees. They also optimize buy listing for card condition as well. Since vendors have different penalties for wear and tear, Card Conduit will find the best buy list priced against the specific condition of a card. So give Card Conduit a try today. If you sign up with my link in the description below or use the promo code POWER, you will also get 10% off their fees when you use their service. A big thanks to Card Conduit for sponsoring today's video. Playing with Power members Ashani, Mike, and Noah are back battling against our Mox Pearl Nick to see who will come out victorious. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have Ashani piloting Shorikai Genesis Engine. This deck slows down the table with stacks while using its commander as a value engine. Ashani's opening hand contains a Tezzeret the Seeker, Mana Crypt, March of Swirling Mist, Humility, Urza's Saga, Felwar Stone, and a Sea of Clouds. Next, we have Nick piloting Yuriko the Tiger Shadow. This deck swings with unblockable ninjas and burns out the table with Yuriko triggers. Nick's opening hand contains a Changeling Outcast, Memnite, Tetsuko Umizawa Fugitive, Morphic Pool, Sunken Ruins, Limdul's Vault, and his London Mulligan is a Street Wraith. After that, we have Mike piloting the partner pair of Ikra Shadiki the Usurper and Kraum Ludovic's Opus. This is a mid-range build seeking to gain life and sink it into an even bigger Ad Naus. Mike's opening hand contains a Tinderwall, Cabal Ritual, Ad Nauseam, Steam Vents, Lotus Petal, Mox Opal, and a Soul Ring. Finally, we have Noah piloting the partner pair of Krark the Thumbless and Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. This deck seeks to cast both of its commanders and storm off for the win. Noah's opening hand contains a Gamble, Heat Shimmer, Tavern Scoundrel, Mind's Desire, Jeweled Lotus, Steam Vents, and a Bloodstained Mire. Without further ado, let's kick off this nonsensical, noisy, nice, nimble narration. Ashani wins the Bomberman Challenge and gets to start us off. Ashani draws a card for turn and plays an Urza's Saga, getting its first counter. He casts a Mana Crypt. He casts a Felwar Stone. He passes. Nick draws a card for turn and plays a Morphic Pool. He casts a Memnite. He casts a Changeling Outcast. Nick passes. Mike draws and plays a Steam Vents and to play untapped, paying 2 life. He casts a Soul Ring. He casts a Lotus Petal. He casts a Mox Opal. Finished up, Mike ends his turn. Noah draws and plays a Shivan Reef. He casts a Jeweled Lotus. He cracks his Lotus to help cast his commander, Krark the Thumbless. He taps his Shivan Reef to help cast Gamble. Krark triggers, he wins the flip, copying Gamble. He fetches up a card into his hand and then randomly discards a Mind's Desire. He then fetches up another card into his hand and then randomly discards a Tavern Scoundrel. He casts a Mana Crypt. He casts a Soul Ring. All through, Noah gives the turn to Ashani. During his upkeep, Ashani loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He draws, and in his first main phase, Urza's Saga gets another counter. He plays a Sea of Clouds for turn. He casts his commander, Shorikai Genesis Engine. In response, Mike casts Cabal Ritual, adding 3 black. He casts Ad Nauseam. Ad Naus resolves, and Mike reveals a Crop Rotation, Flusterstorm, Windfall, Marsh Flats, Spell Pierce, Necropotence, Chrome Mox, Arcane Signet, Bloodstained Mire, Fierce Guardianship, Breeding Pool, Volcanic Island, Felwar Stone, Birds of Paradise, Pyroblast, Dockside Extortionist, Final Fortune, Jeweled Lotus, Ledger Shredder, and a Chain of Vapor, deciding to stop there. Then Shorikai resolves. The table worries as Ashani passes the turn. Nick draws and plays the Sunken Ruins. The table asks him to hold up interaction for Mike and he moves to combat. Nick attacks Mike with Memnite and Changeling Outcast. Mike declares no blocks and, in response, Nick ninjutsus in his commander, Yuriko the Tiger Shadow, bouncing Memnite to his hand. Then Mike takes it and Yuriko triggers twice. Nick reveals a Thieves Guild Enforcer into his hand with each opponent losing 1 and a Demonic Tutor into his hand with each opponent losing 2. In his second main phase, Nick recasts Memnite. He gives the turn to Mike. Mike draws and casts Chrome Mox, imprinting Birds of Paradise. He plays a Volcanic Island for turn. He casts Dockside Extortionist. It enters and Mike creates 7 treasures. He casts a Jeweled Lotus. He casts a Tinder Wall. He casts a Mana Vault. He casts Necropotence. He casts Crop Rotation, sacrificing Volcanic Island as an additional cost. He fetches up an Emergent Zone onto the battlefield. He activates Necropotence 6 times, paying 6 life and exiling 6 cards. He casts Chain of Vapor, bouncing Dockside to his hand. He sacks a land, copies the chain, and bounces Necropotence back to his hand. Mike moves to his end step and puts the Necro cards into his hand. Still in his end step, he cracks his Emergent Zone, giving his spells flash until end of turn. He flashes in a Dockside Extortionist, creating 7 treasures. He flashes in a Gamble. He fetches up a card into his hand and then randomly discards Necropotence. He flashes in Underworld Breach. He escapes Gamble from his graveyard. He fetches up a card into his hand and then randomly discards Windswept Heath. He casts Brain Freeze with all copies targeting himself. He escapes Brain Freeze from his graveyard with all copies targeting himself again. He does this until he mills Lion's Eye Diamond. He escapes Lion's Eye Diamond. He cracks it, discarding his hand, adding 3 blue. He escapes Brain Freeze and Lion's Eye Diamond over and over again until he mills his entire library. He escapes Thassa's Oracle. Oracle enters, triggers, and Mike wins the game. Okay, well, that was pretty quick, so let's go again, shall we? In this game, Noah brings back Krark and Sakashima, and his opening hand contains a Mountain, Ancient Tomb, Riverglide Pathway, Kraum Mox, Mana Vault, Ruby Medallion, and a Mana Crypt. Mike brings back Ikra and Kraum, and his opening hand contains an Ad Nauseam, Fierce Guardianship, Sensei's Divining Top, Dark Ritual, Mox Diamond, Breeding Pool, and a Wooded Foothills. Nick brings back Yuriko, and his opening hand contains a Phyrexian Walker, Signal Pest, Flooded Strand, Underground River, Silver Fur Master, Deadly Rollick, and a Misdirection. Ashani brings back Shorikai, and his opening hand contains an Island, Counterbalance, Isochron Scepter, Polluted Delta, City of Traders, Imposter Mech, and an Azorius Signet. And Noah gets to start us off. Noah draws and plays a Riverglide Pathway. He casts a Mana Crypt. He casts a Kraum Mox, imprinting Desperate Ritual. He casts a Mana Vault. He casts his commander, Krark the Thumbless. He casts his other commander, Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. It enters as a copy of Krark. With both commanders already on the battlefield, Noah passes to Mike. Mike draws and plays a Breeding Pool, into play untapped, paying 2 life. He casts Mox Diamond, discarding Wooded Foothills. He casts Sensei's Divining Top. Mike ends his turn. Nick draws and plays a Flooded Strand. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up an Underground Sea onto the battlefield. He casts Phyrexian Walker and gives the turn to Ashani. Ashani draws and plays a City of Traders. He casts Azorius Signet. He passes. At the end of Ashani's turn, Nick pays 4 life to help cast Dismember, killing Noah's Sakashima. During his upkeep, Noah wins his Mana Crypt roll. During his draw step, he takes a damage from his Mana Vault. In his main phase, he casts a Ruby Medallion. He moves to combat and attacks Mike with Krark. Mike takes it, and in his second main phase, Noah plays a Mountain. Noah gives the turn to Mike. At the end of Noah's turn, Mike activates his top, looking at and rearranging the top 3. Mike draws and plays a Bayou. He casts Dark Ritual. In response, Ashani pays 2 life to cast Mental Misstep, countering Dark Rituals. Mike sits back surprised as he's never seen his Dark Ritual countered before. A deflated Mike passes to Nick. Nick draws and plays an Underground River. He moves to combat and attacks Mike with Phyrexian Walker. Mike declares no blocks, and in response, Nick taps his Underground River to ninjutsu in his commander, Yuriko the Tiger Shadow, bouncing Phyrexian Walker back to his hand. Mike takes it, and Yuriko triggers. Nick reveals a March of Swirling Mist into his hand, with each opponent losing 1. In his second main phase, Nick recasts Phyrexian Walker. He passes to Ashani. Ashani draws and floats 2 colorless through City of Traders. He plays a Polluted Delta, sacrificing City of Traders. He cracks his Polluted Delta, pays a life, and fetches up a Tundra onto the battlefield. He casts his commander, Shorikai, Genesis Engine. Ashani ends his turn. At the end of Ashani's turn, Noah casts Geist Wave, targeting Mana Vault. Krark triggers, he loses the flip, bouncing Geist Wave back to his hand. Still in his end step, Nick casts Deadly Rollick for its alternate cost, exiling Krark. Noah sighs and moves to his turn. During his upkeep, Noah loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. During his draw step, he takes a damage from his Mana Vault. He plays an Ancient Tomb for turn. He recasts his commander, Krark the Thumbless. He casts Harmonic Prodigy. He taps his Ancient Tomb to help cast Geist Wave, targeting Mana Vault. Krark triggers twice through Harmonic Prodigy. Noah wins the flip, copying Geist Wave, bouncing Mana Crypt back to his hand and drawing a card. He wins his flip again, copying Geist Wave, bouncing Kraum Mox back to his hand and drawing a card. Then the original resolves, bouncing Mana Vault, and Noah draws again. Noah recasts Mana Crypt. He recasts Kraum Mox, imprinting Evoke Calamity. He recasts Mana Vault. All finished up, Noah passes to Mike. At the end of Noah's turn, Mike spends his top. Mike draws and plays a Flooded Strand. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. He activates his top, looking at and rearranging the top 3. He activates top, drawing a card and putting top on top. He casts Gamble. He fetches up a card into his hand and then randomly discards Ad Nauseam, which feels extra bad. He casts Dockside Extortionist. It enters and Mike creates 7 treasures. He casts his commander, Kraum, Ludovic's Opus. He moves to combat and attacks Noah with Kraum. Noah takes it and Mike gives the turn to Nick. Nick draws and plays a Polluted Delta. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Watery Grave into play untapped, paying 2 life. He moves to combat and attacks Ashani with Yuriko and Phyrexian Walker. Ashani declares no blocks and, in response, Nick ninjutsus in Silver Fur Master, bouncing Phyrexian Walker back to his hand. Ashani takes it and Yuriko triggers twice. Nick reveals a Sunken Ruins into his hand, and then reveals a Universal Automaton into his hand, with each opponent losing 1. In his second main phase, he recasts Phyrexian Walker. Nick ships the turn to Ashani. Ashani draws and plays an island. He casts Imposter Mech. It enters as a copy of Dockside Extortionist, creating 8 treasures. He casts Counterbalance. Kraum triggers and Mike draws. In response, Mike casts Fierce Guardianship for its alternate cost. In response, Ashani activates Shorikai, drawing 2, discarding 1, and creating a pilot. Then Fierce counters Counterbalance. Next, Ashani casts a Soul Ring. He follows it up with a Tezzeret the Seeker. He activates Tezzeret's second ability, fetching up an Unwinding Clock onto the battlefield. With his engine, see what it did there, now set up, Ashani passes. Ashani untaps his artifacts with Noah. During his upkeep, Noah wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and casts Solve the Equation. Krark triggers twice through Harmonic Prodigy. Noah loses his first flip, bouncing Solve the Equation back to his hand. He wins his second flip, copying Solve the Equation. He fetches up a Strike It Rich into his hand. He casts Strike It Rich. Krark triggers twice, and Kraum triggers. Mike draws, then Noah wins his flip, copying Strike It Rich, creating a treasure. He loses his second flip, bouncing Strike It Rich back to his hand. He casts Solve the Equation. Krark triggers twice. Noah wins his flip, copying Solve the Equation. With the copy on the stack, Nick casts March of Swirling Mist, exiling a blue card, phasing out both Harmonic Prodigy and Krark. Then Solve the Equation resolves, and Noah fetches up a Flusterstorm into his hand. He then wins his next flip, copying Solve, fetching up a Mystical Tutor into his hand. Then the original copy resolves, and he fetches up Mog Salvage into his hand. Noah plays an island for turn. He casts Talisman of Creativity. Noah passes the turn. At the end of Noah's turn, Ashani activates Shorikai, drawing 2, discarding 1, and creating a pilot. Still in the end step, Noah casts Mog Salvage for its alternate cost, targeting Unwinding Clock. In response, Ashani casts Chain of Vapor, bouncing Unwinding Clock back to his hand. The turn moves to Mike. Mike draws and plays a Windswept Heath. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Taiga onto the battlefield. He casts his commander, Ikra Shidiki, the Usurper. He moves to combat and attacks Ashani with Kraum and Noah with Dockside. Both take it, and Mike gains 6 life. All through, Mike passes. Nick draws and plays the Cephalid Colosseum. He moves to combat and attacks Noah with Yuriko and Silver Fur Master. Noah takes it, and Yuriko triggers twice. Nick reveals a Midnight into his hand, and then reveals a Thassa's Oracle into his hand, with each opponent losing 2. In his second main phase, Nick casts Moth Dust Changeling. Nick ends his turn. Ashani draws and recasts Unwinding Clock. He activates Shorikai. In response, Noah casts Mystical Tutor, fetching up a Jessica's Will onto the top of his library. Then Shorikai's ability resolves, and Ashani draws 2, discards 1, and creates a pilot. He crews Imposter Mech and moves to combat. He attacks Noah with Imposter Mech. Noah takes it, and Ashani passes the turn. Before he untaps, Noah's creatures phase in. Ashani untaps his artifacts with Noah. During his upkeep, Noah loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. Still in his upkeep, Ashani casts Pongify, targeting Krark. Krark is destroyed, and Noah creates a 3/3/8. During his draw step, Noah takes a damage from his Mana Vault. Finally, in his main phase, he taps his Ancient Tomb to help recast its commander, Krark the Thumbless. In response, Ashani flashes in a Dress Down. Kraum triggers, and Mike draws. Dress Down resolves, and Ashani draws. Then Krark resolves. Noah casts Jessica's Will, adding 5 red and exiling Overmaster, Dualcaster Mage, and Swansong. He casts Overmaster from exile. It resolves, and Noah draws. He casts Dualcaster Mage. He passes. At the end of Noah's turn, Ashani activates Shorikai, drawing 2, discarding 1, and creating a pilot. Then Dress Down is sacrificed. Ashani untaps his artifacts with Mike through Unwinding Clock. Mike draws and moves to combat. He attacks Ashani with Kraum. Ashani takes it, and in his second main phase, Mike casts Imperial Seal. He fetches up a card onto the top of his library and loses 2 life. Mike passes. At the end of Mike's turn, Ashani activates Shorikai, drawing 2, discarding 1, and creating a pilot. Nick draws and plays a Sunken Ruins. He moves to combat, attacking Mike with Yuriko, Silver Fur, and Moth Dust Changeling. Mike takes it, and Yuriko triggers 3 times. Nick reveals a 4th Bridge Prowler into his hand, with each opponent losing 1. He reveals a Dispel into his hand, with each opponent losing 1, and he reveals a Verdant Catacombs into his hand. Finished up, Nick ends his turn. At the end of Nick's turn, Ashani activates Shorikai, drawing 2, discarding 1, and creating a pilot. Then Nick discards the hand size, and the turn moves to Ashani. Ashani draws and plays an island. He activates Shorikai, drawing 2, discarding 1, and creating a pilot. He casts Drannith Magistrate. Ashani passes. During his upkeep, Noah loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. During his draw step, he takes a damage from his Mana Vault. In his main phase, he casts Dockside Extortionist. It enters and Noah creates 9 treasures. With nothing else, Noah passes. At the end of Noah's turn, Ashani activates Shorikai, drawing 2, discarding 1, and creating a pilot. Mike draws and moves to combat. He attacks Ashani with Kraum and Nick with Ikra. They both take it, and Mike gains 11 life. Mike passes the turn. At the end of Mike's turn, Ashani activates Shorikai, drawing 2, discarding 1, and creating a pilot. Nick draws and casts a Soul Ring. He casts Memnite. Kraum triggers and Mike draws. He casts Universal Automaton. He activates Moth Dust Changeling, tapping Memnite, giving it flying until end of turn. He moves to combat and attacks Mike with Yuriko, Silver Fur, Phyrexian Walker, and Noah with Moth Dust Changeling. Before damage, Noah casts Pyroblast, targeting Moth Dust. Krark triggers twice through Harmonic Prodigy. He wins his first flip, copying Pyroblast, targeting Yuriko. Yuriko is destroyed. Noah wins his second flip, targeting his own Dockside. It resolves, but doesn't destroy Dockside because it's not blue. Then in response to the original Pyroblast, Nick ninjutsus in his commander, Yuriko, bouncing Moth Dust to his hand. Then they both take it, Noah dies, and Yuriko triggers twice. Nick reveals a Lotus Petal into his hand, and then reveals a Morphic Pool into his hand. In his second main phase, he plays a Morphic Pool for turn. He casts a Lotus Petal. Finished up, Nick passes. At the end of Nick's turn, Ashani activates Shorikai, drawing 2, discarding 1, and creating a pilot. Still in the end step, Ashani channels Otawara, Soaring City, bouncing Imposter Mech to his hand. The turn moves to Ashani. Ashani draws and casts Imposter Mech. In response, Mike casts an Offer You Can't Refuse. In response, Ashani casts Dispel. Kraum triggers and Mike draws. In response, Nick casts his own Dispel, targeting Ashani's Dispel. With nothing else, Dispel counters Dispel and Offer counters Imposter Mech, and then Ashani creates 2 treasures. Next, Ashani casts Silence. In response, Mike casts Spell Pierce, countering Silence. Next, Ashani casts Isochron Scepter. In response, Mike casts Veil of Summer, looking for an answer. Veil resolves and Mike draws. Mike tells him that he did not find what he needs and he needs Nick's help. So in response, Nick cracks his Cephalid Coliseum, targeting Mike. Mike draws 3 and discards 3. Unfortunately, he still cannot find an answer, and Isochron Scepter resolves. It enters and Ashani imprints Dramatic Reversal. He activates Isochron, repeatedly casting Dramatic Reversal and untapping his non-land permanents. He generates infinite mana and then begins activating Shorikai, drawing and discarding. He draws until he finds and casts Blind Obedience. He now uses Isochron Scepter to cast Dramatic Reversal over and over again, this time extorting it through Blind Obedience. He does this over and over and drains the table, and Ashani wins the game. Ladies and gentlemen, what a fun set of games tonight. Congrats to Mike and Ashani on their wins. In Game 1, Mike had an amazing opener and closed out the game before anyone could stabilize. He had a narrow window to act and timed his ad nauseum perfectly to dodge interaction. In Game 2, Ashani built up his engines and timed his interaction very well. The table had their sights laser focused on Noah and let Ashani build his advantage up over multiple turns. He used that in his favor and closed out the game with lots of protection. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more like this, please consider subscribing. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Tune in next time when we duke it out to see who will be king of the competitive EDH table. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.